After more than 30 hours of travel from Vancouver to Toronto to Addis Ababa and finally to Kilimanjaro International Airport, I arrived in Tanzania in March 2025, exhausted but ready to get to work. Carefully packed into our 6 suitcases were 70 books for girls, stories about gender equality, body autonomy, and empowerment, books that are often difficult to access in East Africa. I expected a quick passage through customs, excited to begin my work. Instead, I had an encounter that emphasized the very reason I had decided to do this project in the first place. As our bags were scanned and inspected, a small selection of books, titles like Bodies Are Cool and Feminism for Kids, drew the interest of airport officials. What began as a routine inspection spiraled into a crazy scene. Custom agents huddled together, flipping through pages meant for young children, giggling and whispering as if they had found contraband rather than educational material. What struck me most in that airport, under the weight of heat and humiliation, wasn't just the censorship of books. It was the discomfort, the laughter, and the shame projected onto images of girls' bodies. And I couldn't stop thinking, if trained professionals reacted this way, what messages were young girls receiving about their own bodies, about the right to understand them, about their right to be seen, heard, and informed? That moment solidified why I had come, because access to books is about more than literacy. It's about dignity and the freedom to learn. And when we talk about empowerment, especially for girls in areas where conversations about gender and bodies are still uncomfortable, it often begins not with policy, but with the simple act of handing a girl a book. Hi, my name is Kiana Cooke, and this is my Masterworks, Periods, Poverty, and Patriarchy, the triple threat to girls' education in East Africa. My Masterworks project explores the urgent and global crisis of educational inequality for girls, focusing on both Kibera, Kenya, and the rural community of Mtwambe, Tanzania. These 2 places may seem very different, but girls in both face huge challenges when it comes to getting an education. In Kibera, the struggles of urban poverty are everywhere, while in rural Tanzania, girls face their own barriers like long distances to school, lack of resources, or deep-rooted cultural expectations. Through my Masterworks project, I want to highlight the injustices girls face in both urban and rural areas, but also show the strength and determination they have. Because whether a girl lives in a busy city or a small village, she deserves the chance to go to school and follow her dreams. Girls in Kenya and Tanzania don't just hope for an education. They have to fight for it every single day. By telling their stories, I hope to help people understand why education for girls should never be a privilege. It should be right for everyone, everywhere. I want you to imagine a world where every girl has the opportunity to learn, grow, and contribute to society without barriers. A world where she can go to school even while on her period, even if her family cannot afford fees, or even if she's expected to marry at just 12 years old. Yet today, over 130 million girls around the world are out of school. Education is not just a basic human right. It's a powerful tool to help break cycles of poverty, reduce inequality, and empower girls for generations to come. So let's look at some stats. In sub-Saharan Africa, 86 million girls are out of school, over 2/3 of the global total. In some low-income countries, only about 66% of girls complete primary school. Less than 1/3 go on to finish secondary school. In conflict-affected areas, girls are 2.5 times more likely to be out of school than their peers in peaceful regions. Women still make up more than 2/3 of the world's illiterate population. Girls face a 20% higher risk of dropping out of school due to early marriage, and in some countries, up to 40% of girls marry before the age of 18. But studies show that access to education could reduce child marriage by 64% and cut child mortality nearly in half. These statistics reflect how urgent it is to ensure every girl has equal access to education, because when girls are educated, they are empowered to change the world, one community at a time. Learning about these challenges made me want to do more than just write about them. I wanted to take action. In Nairobi, I helped create new period packs as part of a menstrual health program that supports girls who often miss school because they don't have access to the supplies they need. I also realized that even if girls have access to period kits, a lot of them don't know how to manage their periods. So then I designed a project called Vitabu vya Matumaini, or Books of Hope. These are portable libraries filled with books just for girls. These book boxes include stories about confidence, consent, menstruation, and female empowerment. Learning about all the challenges that girls face was overwhelming, and I knew that it was impossible to fix all of them. But I decided that if something small can make a difference, even for one girl, then it would all be worth it. Poverty is one of the greatest obstacles to girls' education. Families with limited resources often prioritize boys' education, seeing it as a better investment. Girls are kept home to help with chores or care for siblings, making school an impossible dream. Even when education is technically free, hidden costs such as uniforms, supplies, and transportation put it out of reach for so many families. And millions of children try to learn on an empty stomach, lacking the nutrition necessary to focus, participate, or retain information. And then there's safety. Each year, 60 million girls are sexually assaulted on their way to or at school. In low-income regions, over half the schools don't have access to clean drinking water or proper sanitation. During their periods, many girls stay home because there's no place to wash or change. What begins as a few missed days often turns into dropping out altogether. Despite all of these challenges, the ripple effect of educating girls is undeniable. Educated girls tend to marry later, have fewer children, participate more in their communities, and contribute to national economies. Education helps girls build critical thinking, confidence, and a sense of purpose. It's not a luxury, it's a right. 2 years ago, I first visited a place that symbolizes both the challenges and the hope surrounding girls' education. In Kibera, Nairobi, the largest informal settlement in Africa, people live without basic infrastructure, little or no running water, electricity, or proper sanitation. And yet they live with community, resilience, and pride. This year I had the chance to return to Kibera and also travel to rural Tanzania, where I saw firsthand that while the settings are different, the challenges for girls trying to access education are just as real. Whether in a crowded urban settlement or a quiet rural village, girls face daily obstacles that make going to school a constant struggle. Their strength and determination continue to inspire me. Despite the differences in location, one thing was clear. Access to books and safe learning spaces can open doors for girls everywhere. After arriving in Tanzania the night before, tired and frustrated after being stuck in customs over the books we had brought for girls, we woke up early, ready for what we'd hoped would be a better day. After a very hectic morning full of challenges, including cars breaking down and lots of mud, we finally reached the moment we had been working so hard towards, the opening of a library in the town of Mtwambu. Mtwambu is a community located along the AIDS highway, the main trucking route marked by both the movement of people and the spread of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. This library we were making wasn't just a space for books, it was a symbol of hope, learning, and opportunity. We opened in honor of my grandmother, Ann Pearson, who spent much of her life advocating for access to education in East Africa. She created a nonprofit organization called the African Children's Book Box Society, which I'll refer to as ABB, in 1991 in Nairobi, Kenya. ABB is dedicated to promoting literacy, gender equity, and community health by providing culturally relevant books, educational resources, and community support to children across East Africa. This library was my family's way of continuing her legacy and creating a safe, welcoming space where children, especially girls, could read, learn, and dream. The library, named Maktaba ya Miti Miwili, or Library of Two Trees, was built through a partnership between ABB and Majengo Children's Home in Mtwambu, Tanzania. Majengo is a local charity that supports vulnerable children with education, nutrition, and a safe place to grow. The library's name reflects the two countries that made it possible, Tanzania and Canada, symbolizing a bridge between communities united by a shared commitment to literacy, empowerment, and connection. Once we arrived, I immediately got to work on putting together the girls' book box I had created, Vitabu vya Matumaini, which is Swahili for Books of Hope. I had carefully curated the books inside and had most of them sent over from Kenya, as it is easier to get books in Kenya than it is in Tanzania. For the girls' book boxes, I was able to raise over $3,000 by writing newsletters and writing to donors, family, and friends at ABB. I was assembling 2 book boxes to be delivered in Tanzania, one for the library and another for the Girls Foundation of Tanzania. I would deliver the remaining book boxes the following week to schools in Nairobi. Once the book boxes were complete, I chose one to put on display inside the library, a small gesture, but a meaningful one. I wanted it to invite curiosity and conversation. I started arranging the books so they were standing up on display in the box when Joseph, a Tanzanian man who works at Majengo, came over with a suggestion. Why not put a few of these on the shelves? Without hesitation, he picked up Feminism for Kids, Bodies Are Cool, and a few others, books focused on periods, consent, and feminism. I couldn't help but laugh, not because his suggestion was funny, but because it was so ironic. These were the very books that had made the male custom agents so uncomfortable in the Kilimanjaro airport just 2 days before. They had examined them with looks of discomfort and judgment, clearly unsure if such material should be even allowed in the country. Yet here we were, inside the library, with a Tanzanian man confidently recommending they be placed on display. It felt like a full circle moment, one that reflected the true heart of this project, creating spaces where these conversations can be normalized, where information is shared openly, and where books can challenge cultural taboos without fear. As we prepared for the official library opening, more and more people started to arrive. By the time everything had started, around 250 people had gathered. What moved me most was seeing the number of students and teachers who came on a Sunday, eyes full of curiosity and excitement. The event started with speeches from community members and representatives from ABB and Majengo. Each speaker reminded us why this space matters and how much potential it holds. Then came the ribbon cutting ceremony. As the ribbon fell away, the children ran forward, spilling into the library with joy and energy. They began flipping through books, reading loud, pointing out pictures to their friends. It was incredible. But amid all that joy, one particular moment stood out, one that would leave a lasting impression. Towards the end of the event, I noticed 2 female teachers. They were probably around 50 years old, standing by the shelf where I'd placed the body books. They were quietly flipping through them. Their faces showed clear discomfort, and after a few moments, they exchanged a look, then calmly began taking the books down. Without saying anything, they packed them back into the girls' book box and closed it. At first, I was surprised, but then I realized this is exactly why these books are needed. Their reaction, silent, disapproving, cautious, was a reflection of the discomfort many people still feel around these topics. If female teachers were this uneasy, it only emphasized the importance of making sure young people have access to this kind of content. Books about the body normalize conversations about periods, consent, and the value of girls and women. These aren't just important, they are urgent. That moment reminded me that while we have made progress, there's still a long way to go. It also reinforced why I'm doing this and why these book boxes matter. Because change doesn't happen all at once, it happens one story at a time. That experience opened my eyes to how silence and stigma are not just emotional barriers, they have real consequences for girls around the world. One of the clearest examples of this is period poverty, a widespread but often overlooked issue that directly affects girls' ability to stay in school and live with dignity. Period poverty is a global issue that affects access to menstrual products, hygiene, and education. Around 1.8 billion people menstruate, and 500 million of them experience some form of period poverty. It's not just a health issue, it's a matter of gender equality and human rights. Economic inequality is a major cause of period poverty. In many low-income countries, menstrual products are too expensive, forcing girls to use rags, leaves, or even cardboard, which can lead to infections or embarrassment at school. Many schools also lack proper facilities for girls to wash or change, causing them to miss school during their periods, and sometimes even leading them to drop out. Cultural taboos and shame around menstruation make things even worse, silencing conversations and isolating girls further. Without education about periods, many girls don't know how to manage them or feel too embarrassed to ask for help. Some NGOs are addressing period poverty by providing education, improving sanitation, and distributing products. One of them is Majengo. In 2023, I partnered with Majengo and ABB for my community service project. I created their first quarterly newsletter, spotlighting the Period Poverty Initiative, raising $535 Canadian, enough to provide 21 girls with reusable period packs for a full year. This project helped me understand the broader struggles girls face and sparked the passion that led to my Masterworks. That experience didn't end with a donation. It became the foundation for something bigger. In November 2024, I spoke with Simone Hamilton, who is the executive director at Majengo, about the Period Poverty Project and to see how I could replicate it in Kibera, Nairobi. Kibera is the largest informal settlement in Africa, also located along the AIDS Highway, a region heavily impacted by the spread of HIV due to high levels of poverty, population flow, and limited healthcare access. A community-run organization called Reaching Out with Compassion Kibera, or ROC, helps provide scholarships and mentorship programs for students in Kibera. Since my community project, I have been working with ROC on a menstrual health program that supports over 450 girls each school term, with disposable pads and education sessions about menstrual health. In November 2024, I reached out to ROC to inquire about adding reusable pads for these 450 girls. ROC held a meeting with parents and girls in the community to discuss their needs and find out if reusable pads would be helpful. The information that came from that meeting was really insightful and helped me understand the issue around environmental sustainability of menstrual products and how it is much more complex than I had known. While reusable pads work in the Menstrual Health Project in Mtwambwe, Tanzania, a more remote and rural area, they don't work in Kibera, a densely packed urban settlement with serious sanitation challenges and limited access to clean water. The parents and girls stated that in Kibera, the reusable pads wouldn't work, as girls don't have a way to clean and dry them effectively, highlighting the complexity of period poverty, with no clear one-size-fits-all solution. In March 2025, I had the opportunity to be part of two menstrual health programs, one in rural Tanzania and the other in urban Kenya. Both sessions aimed to break the silence around periods and provide girls with practical tools and knowledge, but each setting had its own unique energy and challenges. In Tanzania, the conversations had been quieter, more cautious. The period talk was held at a rural school in the village of Mtwambwe, with a largely Maasai student population. It took place in a small, basic schoolroom with a chalkboard and shared tables and benches. The talk was led by a nurse who works at Majengo. She talked about how to deal with periods, wash your reusable pads properly, and how to keep yourself in school when you have your period. She did an excellent job of sharing information with the girls and demonstrating how to use the reusable pads. I could tell that the girls wanted to be there and were quietly excited about receiving their new period packs. However, it was also obvious that this was a topic that few girls had ever discussed before. When the nurse asked a question, usually only one or two girls put up their hand to answer, and when they did so, they were so quiet and shy that I could barely hear them. While the room was full of 12 to 15-year-old girls, every single window was filled with younger, curious faces peering in. In Kibera, there was a different kind of energy. 60 girls sat shoulder to shoulder, eyes wide, eager to learn more about something many had never had the chance to openly discuss. These girls didn't just show up to listen. They are ready to engage and share their own experiences and ideas. It was a big difference from Tanzania, and I think that's because there have been more programs in place to help girls feel empowered. Kibera is home to many NGOs and community-based organizations that focus on health, education, and gender equity. While menstrual health remains a major challenge, there has been growing attention to female empowerment through programs that try to build girls' confidence, leadership, and awareness of their rights. For the new menstrual health kits I designed, I was able to raise almost $2,000 by writing newsletters and writing to donors at ABB. This helped buy 68 new period packs for girls in Kibera.
The journey to empowering girls begins with a simple yet powerful idea, ensuring they have everything they need to manage their periods with dignity and confidence. This is a story of preparing our period packs carefully crafted to make a difference in the lives of many young girls. The day started with a visit to a well-known tailor in the market who made bags and clothes. And throughout our conversation and samples that I was shown, I could see his combining skills, precision, and creativity of his work, which convinced me to place an order of 200 kitenge bags. At the supermarket, I was moving from rows to rows, shelf to shelf, carefully selecting every item. A bar of soap for hygiene, 2 pairs of panties for comfort, a pack of sanitary towels for protection, and a delayed trouser to ensure personal care. Each of these items is more than just a product. They are tools of empowerment, allowing girls to manage their periods safely and with confidence. Seeing how well they turned out, and I'm sure the girls will absolutely love them. I can't wait to share this with them and see their joyful reactions. One by one, the period packs came together, each filled with care, ready to be distributed to our girls. And as I sealed the last bag, I knew that this wasn't just about providing product. It was about ensuring that no girl feels unprepared, ashamed, or alone during her period. Because when we invest in menstrual health, we invest in education, confidence, and the future of our girls.
Together, these two sessions showed the power of education around menstrual health. Whether in a quiet rural classroom in Tanzania or an urban gathering in Kenya, the girls showed excitement to learn and a deep appreciation for being seen and supported. The contrast between the two settings only reinforced how essential it is to meet girls where they are, with respect, information, and the tools that can help them take charge of their own stories. To better understand this issue, I scheduled a visit to Rock in March 2025. I had arranged to have a discussion with around 15 teenage girls to talk about their experiences living in Kibera. I was really nervous because when I walked into the room, I realized that it wasn't 15 girls, but 40. The classroom was packed with girls, all between the ages of 14 and 15, their eyes filled with curiosity and determination. I had just come from the period pack distribution, and as we sat together, they shared their thoughts, their struggles, and their dreams with an openness that was both humbling and inspiring. Periods were a defining part of their lives, but not in the way they should be. Many of these girls had to make an impossible choice between buying pads and buying food. Often when their periods came, they stayed home from school, unable to manage the bleeding without proper supplies. Despite this, education in Kibera was relatively accessible to both boys and girls. Schools ran from 6 in the morning until 6 at night, a structure that kept many girls from falling into early pregnancies or marriages. Still, safety remained a constant concern. The streets, the homes, the very spaces they moved through carried dangers that shaped their every decision. The girls shared with me that one of the greatest struggles they faced was the absence of people in which to confide in. Without mentors and adults who could guide them, they were left to navigate the complexities of adolescence on their own. Many of them couldn't even talk to their parents. If I had a boyfriend, one girl told me, my mom would kill me, resurrect me, and kill me again. Laughter rippled through the group at her dramatics, but beneath it was a shared reality. Romantic relationships were full of secrecy, pressure, and sometimes fear. Yet there was strength in their voices. Unlike in Tanzania, where the girls had been shy and reserved during a similar period pack distribution and talk, the girls in Kibera were engaged and empowered. They asked questions, shared experiences, and spoke with a confidence that was striking. Still, there were reminders of how much they carried. A moment that will stay with me forever was when I asked the room full of 14 and 15-year-old girls if any of their friends were married. And without hesitation, every single one of the 40 teenage girls raised their hands. every single one. Despite the hardships, the joy was still present. The schools were underfunded and had almost nothing, but the girls still laughed, still found happiness in their friendships, in their learning, and all the things that made up their world. As I sat with them, listening to their stories, I couldn't help but feel the intensity of it all, of their struggles, their strength, and the undeniable potential that each of them carried. It made me realize that the biggest challenges aren't just lack of resources. They're also battling deeply rooted cultural norms that hold them back before they even begin. Cultural beliefs not only contribute to period poverty, but also create major barriers to girls' education. Rooted in tradition, religion, and societal expectations, these beliefs often limit girls' opportunities to learn and succeed. Practices like early marriage and teenage pregnancy, especially in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East, force many girls to leave school too soon. These choices don't just affect individual girls, they hold back entire communities. When girls miss out on education, society loses out too. In fact, the World Bank estimated that in 1 year alone, 15 to 20 trillion US dollars was lost globally due to women being excluded from the workforce. In countries like Tanzania, Kenya, Ghana, and Ethiopia, harmful traditions like female genital mutilation, or FGM, are often linked to early marriage. These practices rob girls of their futures and make staying in school nearly impossible. Changing long-standing customs isn't easy, but it is possible. Programs like the Majengo Maasai Girls Program in Mtwambu, Tanzania, are helping. With social workers, Majengo provides health education and support to encourage girls to stay in school and challenge harmful traditions. Small changes are taking root, and more girls are continuing their education with help of community-wide support. In March 2025, I had the privilege of visiting some Maasai communities in Tanzania. After winding through the vast Tanzanian landscape, past endless stretches of dry earth and scattered acacia trees, we arrived at the Maasai Bomas. The village was alive with the sounds of livestock, the chatter of women tending to their daily tasks, and children peeking curiously from behind their mothers. Yet beneath the surface of this vibrant culture lay stories that were equally heartbreaking and important to hear. One of the first things I learned about was a 6-year-old girl who had narrowly escaped being married off to a man almost 70 years old. Majengo had found her just in time, but the reality was heartbreaking. This was just one case among many, and she was lucky that someone had intervened. Child marriage is deeply embedded in the Maasai way of life, and not every girl is as lucky. Life in the Bomas was a different world altogether. Bomas are little huts made out of mud and sticks that the Maasai people live in. Up to 6 people live in a single boma, sleeping on beds made out of mud or sticks, covered with cowskin and plastic. A Maasai man we met had 5 wives, each living in her own boma with her many children. Every night he decided where he wanted to sleep. Women would spend up to 8 hours a day cooking, and childbirth usually happened within the village unless complications arose. Hospitals were rarely an option due to tradition and cost. There were no toilets in the village, and instead people went to the fields, the bushes, or anywhere else they could. One of the young women told me that when girls are menstruating, they often use corn husks, old pieces of fabric, or torn-up mattresses instead of menstrual pads, as families had to make the financial choice between providing food or menstrual pads for their daughters. In many cases, the easiest thing to do is simply to sell the daughter to a prospective husband's family for a dowry. A dowry can range from a few cases of soda, or if she's from a really good family, she could be worth a couple goats or a cow. At the end of the visit, I stood in the center of the village, surrounded by the sights and sounds of daily life. I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. There was beauty here, the strength of women, the resilience of girls who fought for their futures, and the deep sense of community. Yet there was also an undeniable weight, a harsh reality that couldn't be ignored. The struggle for girls' rights in the Maasai community is far from over, but organizations like Majengo are making a difference, one life at a time. As we drove away, I couldn't shake the thought that for every girl saved, there were still countless others waiting for their chance. After spending time in the Maasai communities and witnessing both the resilience and struggles of the girls in Mtwambu, I sat down with Simone Hamilton, the executive director of Majengo Children's Home. She spoke with quiet but unwavering determination, sharing a stark picture of the challenges girls and women face in Tanzania. One of the first things she told me was that boys and men often don't even know what consent is. It's not part of the curriculum, not discussed at home, and not something most women feel empowered to insist upon. Women feel like they owe men, Simone explained, a statement that sat heavy in the air. She emphasized that teaching consent isn't enough. True change comes when girls gain the power to make their own choices. Even grown men, she noted, don't know about periods. Schools focus so heavily on HIV education that topics like consent, menstruation, and reproductive rights are almost entirely overlooked. When we spoke about reproductive rights, I was struck by a harsh reality. Abortion is only permitted to save a woman's life. Even in cases of rape or incest, girls are often forced to carry pregnancies to term. With few exceptions and little access to safe abortion care, many girls turn to unsafe methods or are left with no choice at all. In Maasai culture, families usually help raise the baby, but for young mothers, the burden of an unplanned pregnancy can limit education, economic opportunity, and personal freedom. Simone pointed out that girls' barriers to education are so much greater than boys. In primary school, they start out relatively equal, but as they grow older, girls are expected to marry, collect water, and take care of the home, while boys are encouraged to continue school. By grade 7, most Maasai girls have dropped out. Looking ahead, Simone told me she hopes for a future where women are respected in relationships and seen as equal partners. She worries that boys growing up around men who mistreat women will absorb these behaviors. But it would be nice to see more equal graduation rates, she told me thoughtfully. Before our conversation ended, she shared an African proverb. If you think you are too small to make a difference, you haven't spent the night with a mosquito. A reminder that even small actions matter. Talking about these issues, raising awareness, and encouraging people to help, this is how change begins. That idea of small actions creating big change echoed again in a recent conversation that also had a lasting impact on me. When I sat down with my external Masterworks advisor, Margaret Butler, I had no idea how deeply our conversation would stay with me. She began by sharing a piece of wisdom that continues to resonate with me. Your pinpoint often becomes your purpose. That simple phrase stayed with me, especially as I reflect on my Masterworks project, something deeply personal and meaningful to me. It made me realize that perhaps the passion I've discovered now could one day shape the path I choose to follow in the future. Margaret reminded me that it's not always a simple story of men versus women, but it's about power, culture, and fear of change. That's why engaging boys in these conversations is so important. As Margaret said, in order to really impact girls, boys have to understand. This lesson stayed with me during my visit to Kibera this past March, where delivering book boxes to girls was one of the most powerful and complex parts of my trip. Kibera is the largest informal settlement in Africa and the third largest in the world, with up to 3 million people living there. It's a place of striking contradictions: deep poverty, along resilience, community, and innovation. Narrow dirt paths wind between homes made out of sheet metal, most without electricity or running water, with open sewers in between. Children laugh in alleyways, vendors call from roadside stalls, and there's a constant buzz of life. Despite the hardship, I was amazed by how people make do with so little. I was delivering a book box to a small school deep in Kibera. The school had minimal resources, tiny classrooms, dirt floors, sheet metal roofs, few materials, and a high student-to-teacher ratio, but it was full of energy. The headmaster greeted us warmly, assuming we were bringing him curriculum books like English or math. As I opened the box and explained the purpose, his expression changed. These books, I said, holding up titles on periods, consent, confidence, and gender equality, are chosen to empower girls. He paused, then replied, "Girls here are too empowered already. It's always girls, girls, girls. What about the boys?" His words hit hard, not because I agreed, but because they revealed something deeper. I understood his frustration. Yes, boys also need support, but the idea that girls are too empowered, there's no such thing. I flashed back to the Kilimanjaro airport, furious at the sexist comments of the male staff. His response wasn't cruel, but it came from real tension. In places like Kibera, where girls have historically been denied education and rights, new efforts to uplift them can feel like a loss to others. But empowering girls doesn't disempower boys, it creates balance. I tried to explain that, how these books weren't about excluding boys, but giving girls the tools they've long gone without. He listened, but I sensed his discomfort. That moment reminded me, delivering books isn't just about materials. It's about challenging old ideas and planting seeds that may take time to grow. Watching boys and girls later in their classrooms, engaged and curious, I felt hopeful. Children aren't born with bias, they're still learning, and books can help shape what they come to believe. Kibera taught me that empowerment work brings friction, it sparks resistance, reveals complexity, and invites difficult conversations. But that doesn't mean we stop. It means we keep going. One book, one conversation, one box at a time. Another one of my most powerful moments during my time in Kenya didn't happen in a classroom or a big event. It happened in the backseat of a car. I was on my way to deliver another girls' book box to a local school in Kibera, driving through the maze of narrow dirt roads and busy streets when the conversation turned towards safety. I was sitting beside a few of the staff members from ROC, the organization helping me distribute the books, when I asked one of the women a question that had been sitting with me for a while. Do girls feel safe in Kibera? She shook her head quietly and said no. Her voice was calm, but her answer hit hard. She told me that for most girls, the only real way to stay safe is to get home early, before the sun goes down. Her answer stayed with me because even though I live in a completely different part of the world, what she said wasn't unfamiliar. Even here in Canada, a country considered developed and safe, I also think about these things, just maybe a bit differently. But I also avoid walking alone at night. I also check over my shoulder, keep my keys between my fingers, and stick to well-lit streets. It made me realize just how universal this fear is for girls and women. But in Kibera, this fear comes with even fewer protections and far fewer options. That's when someone in the car said something that changed the whole direction of our conversation. If we only focus on empowering girls, and we don't do anything for boys, we're never going to change the cycle. This reminded me of my conversation with Margaret and what she said about empowering boys. There's also seemed to be a common theme that kept coming up during both my time in Tanzania and Kenya. We were doing so much for girls: books, programs, mental health education. But what happens when boys are left out of the conversation? What happens when they don't feel seen, supported, or empowered? I was told that in Kibera, it's becoming more and more common for boys to drop out of school. And when boys grow up feeling powerless, that frustration often spills over, sometimes into violence, often towards girls. We talked about the idea of creating something for boys, a version of the menstrual health project, but something specifically for them. We discussed a space where they could learn about puberty, sex, consent, and how to be supportive of the girls in their lives, and the possibility of a program that teaches boys not just how to be men, but how to be kind, safe, and respectful humans. Then someone asked a big question. Do you think men and women will ever be equal? Mary Juma, a graduate of Rock who now works at ABB, looked out the window for a moment, then said something I'll never forget. Women can be empowered, but not equal. Women and men can find equity, but never equality. That conversation made me reflect deeply on the difference between equity, equality, and empowerment. 3 words I've used a lot throughout my Masterworks, but without fully unpacking what they mean. Equality is the idea that everyone should receive the same treatment, the same resources, the same opportunities, the same rules. It sounds fair in theory, but the problem is not everyone is starting from the same place. Imagine offering both a boy and girl in East Africa a scholarship to attend a school. On paper, they have equal opportunity, but if the girl also has to walk several kilometers to fetch water each morning, care for her younger siblings, and manage her period without proper supplies, she's facing far more obstacles. Giving them both a scholarship doesn't erase the extra burdens she carries. That's where equity comes in. Equity is about fairness, not sameness. It means giving people what they actually need to succeed, and not just what everyone else gets. In the context of girls and boys in Kibera, equality would be giving them both access to school. But equity would mean understanding that girls face extra barriers, like child marriage, housework, period poverty, or gender-based violence, and providing additional support to help them overcome those obstacles. Equity acknowledges the weight of history, culture, and systemic barriers, and tries to find some balance. Then there's empowerment, which goes even deeper. Empowerment is about more than just having access to resources or opportunities. It's about having the confidence, knowledge, and support to make decisions for yourself and take control of your own future. It's not just about opening the door. It's making sure someone feels strong enough to walk through it. In Kibera, empowerment looks like a girl who used to miss school during her period because she didn't have pads, now sitting proudly in class every day because she received menstrual health education and reusable supplies through a program designed just for her. It looks like a 14-year-old girl attending a workshop where she learns that consent matters, that her body is her own, and that she has the right to say no, even if no one has ever told her that before. It looks like a girl who was once told that her only future was marriage or motherhood, now raising her hand in class and saying she wants to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. It's not just about dreams, it's about giving her the tools to chase them. Empowerment is when girls start to believe that they matter and they have choices. It's when they stop apologizing for being seen. Empowerment also means giving girls the support to use their voice without fear, because it's not enough just to educate a girl. We have to make sure the world around her is ready to listen. That's why programs in Mtwambu and Kibera don't just hand out pads or lead one-off workshops. Instead, they build safe spaces, and they create networks of female mentors. They also help girls grow up knowing they're not alone. And most importantly, they remind girls that they're powerful right now. So maybe we won't see full equality right away, but we can start with equity, offering real support that meets people where they are. Through this, we create space for empowerment. That conversation in the backseat of a car on a muddy road in Kibera reminded me that change doesn't happen by only lifting one group up. It happens when we lift up everyone. If we want to create safer spaces for girls, we need to make sure that boys are embedded into that change too. Not left behind, but brought along, supported, and empowered. Because real progress doesn't come from handing out books, book boxes, or period packs. It comes from changing the narrative for everyone. We all have a responsibility to act. It's not enough to just stand by and watch. Each of us must raise our voices, challenge outdated beliefs, and include everyone in the fight for equality. Change begins when we confront uncomfortable truths and refuse to accept the status quo. Whether it's through education, advocacy, or simply listening with an open heart, your actions matter. This project would not have been possible without the guidance, support, and generosity of many people, and I'm so grateful to each of you. I'm profoundly grateful to my internal advisor, Carrie Maritime. Thank you for being such a grounding force throughout this entire journey. Your kind encouragement and thoughtful feedback helped me stay focused, even when this project felt overwhelming. You always knew how to guide me, and you created space for me to figure things out on my own, while still feeling supported. I'm so grateful for your belief in me, and for all the time and care you gave to this project. To my external advisor, Margaret Butler, thank you for bringing your wisdom and lived experience to every conversation we had. Your passion for this kind of work and your thoughtful advice helped me see the bigger picture and reminded me why this project matters. To Jen Henriksen, thank you for being both our homeroom teacher and the incredible force behind Masterworks. Your organization, patience, and encouragement helped guide us through every stage, and your dedication made this experience one of the most meaningful parts of my time at IPS. To Simone Hamilton, thank you for being a mentor in so many quiet but important ways. Your passion for purpose-driven work and global education deeply inspired me. The road ahead is long, but with people like you and organizations like Majengo, change is already happening. To Mary Juma, thank you for everything you did to support the book boxes and Perry Packs, and for welcoming me so generously into your community in Kabira. Your help was essential, and your kindness stayed with me long after I returned home. To the staff at Majengo and staff at Rock, thank you for the incredible work you do every day, and for allowing me to learn from your efforts. You're making a real difference. And to all the IPS teachers, thank you for helping me build the skills I need to take on a project like this, and for always encouraging curiosity, compassion, and courage. To my aunt, Lauren Pearson, who lives and works in Afghanistan, helping girls and women access aid and support. Thank you for being such a powerful example of courage, compassion, and unwavering commitment. Your work in such a difficult and often dangerous context has inspired me deeply. You've showed me what it means to fight for equality with both strength and grace, and your example helps shape the way I think about service, justice, and what it truly means to stand up for others. I'm so proud to be your niece, and I hope this project reflects even a small part of the values you've passed on to me. And to my parents, thank you most of all. Flying me across the world for this project is just one example of the endless support you've shown me. Thank you for believing in me and making this journey possible. Your love, patience, and belief in me gave me the confidence to take on something this ambitious, and I'm so lucky to have you by my side. And remember, if you think you are too small to make a difference, you haven't spent the night with a mosquito. No matter how small or powerless we may feel, our persistent efforts create real change. The time to act is now.
You have done an incredible job, and I hope that all of us are inspired by your words and your deeds, and you're embodying what we hope for in an Adams Civic School grade 9 student. So thank you for that. We are going to have questions from the floor, and we're going to start with her advisors if they're not too teared up yet.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic job, Ms. Cooke. Wow, okay, you go first.
I'm not sure I'm much better. How are you two doing? What an honor to have spent this year working with you and watching your curiosity and drive. It just, in today's day and age, we need people like you who care about the world, care about diversity, and care about women and girls. So thank you. My question is about, the broader picture of global development. You have seen it, you have experienced it, you have lived it over the past couple of years, and I'm curious to know, in that sort of broader vision of global development, what would you change when it comes to women and girls? What would you like to see in the future for this type of work?
Okay. So before this project, I thought of aid as money, but now I see it as people. An example of this is USAID was recently cut because of money. But in reality, it's not about the money, it's about people. In Kabira and Matwambu, they're both located along two major AIDS highways. And recently there's already been so much more HIV spread from mothers to their babies because the antiretrovirals to help stop that were almost entirely funded by USAID. So I think that when I think about aid, I think of it as that mother and that baby, and I think that organizations need to start thinking about it like that too.
Thank you. Okay, I'm ready. Amazing job, Ms. Cooke. That was Absolutely fantastic. You're talking about how your aunt Lauren has inspired you to approach this topic with grace, and I think grace and humility are the perfect words to describe how you have approached this topic. It's really, really, really amazing. I was so honored to be asked to be your Masterworks advisor for this topic, so thank you. My question for you is, I know this topic, it's not done for you. This is going to be an ongoing project in your life, and so can you tell us a little bit about what phase, the next phase or phase 2 is going to look like for you?
So I think for now, the next phase of my project is maintaining commitment for those 450 girls. So I have around 9 months, I think, to raise a little over $6,000 to support those girls with period packs for another full year. And then another thing I want to figure out is the possibility of a program for boys and what that would look like.
Okay, great, thank you. Can you tell us also, I see you have one of the book boxes here.
Yeah.
Do you have plans for this book box
I do,
once you're done with it today?
I recently wrote to Covenant House Vancouver and to see if they wanted to partner. So in the next couple of weeks, I will be delivering my first local book box to Covenant House Vancouver to help support homeless youth on the downtown east side.
Thank you.
I now welcome any questions from the floor.
That was a really great presentation. What you're doing is really important. I have a question. Do you have a plan to do this elsewhere as well, like in other countries?
Yeah, so Tanzania and Kenya, they're sort of like in my blood, basically. My grandma founded African Children's Book Box Society, and she did all of the work in Tanzania and Kenya, and now my mom runs it, and also my aunt. She does a lot of aid work. Right now she's living in Afghanistan, and she's helping women and girls get aid. So I think I focused on those two because I have lots of connection there, and then definitely doing something here is the next thing I want to focus on, doing something local.
That was amazing. That was probably one of the most detailed and most like local and like empowering presentation, in my opinion. And if you were to do this Masterworks again, what would you change?
Honestly, I don't think I would change anything. I'm very happy with my final project. Yeah, I had a 40-page paper and I had to cut it down to a, it's supposed to be 20-page script, but mine was 27. But yeah, no, I'm really happy with my final project, and I honestly don't think I would change anything.
Excellent job, Mrs. Cooke. Miss Cooke, sorry. Fantastic presentation. It's a very important topic, and I feel like you presented it very well. As for my presentation, if you had 4 more months in Africa, free of charge, what would you do?
That's a good question. I think a program for boys, doing something, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Cooke. You spoke at this beautiful moment where you're in, I can't remember which village it was, but you had that moment where you're standing out, taking it all in, and you talked about how things were beautiful, and then you were struck by so many things. And one of the things that really struck me in this work, I feel quite humbled by your presentation, is the courage you've displayed. One, to talk about a challenging topic, even here in our own local community. It's not something we talk about a lot, but you brought that to a culture where it's just not talked about at all. You had the courage to face extreme differences. You showed us some, you know, from my perspective, shocking pictures of what village life looks like. And maybe most importantly, the courage to face real power, right? How, and I'm not sure if you can answer this, but I'd really, if you feel comfortable sharing it, love to hear where you find that courage to do something like this.
Probably from my parents. Yeah. Don't cry, I want to cry.
Ms. Cooke, thank you so much for your contribution to the world. I know you started in grade 8. I know it started well before that, but I was so inspired by what you did in grade 8. I can't believe what you've done in 1 more year. It's just incredible. I have one thing that really struck me that I appreciate is that you seem to consult with people in that community to find out what their specific issues are. And I know there's a story about a village where an organization brought in a well right into the village to provide fresh water, and it took away the time that mothers and daughters had to go walk to the distant well, and that was culturally really important time for them to learn. Was there a time, you mentioned having to problem solve, was there something that really surprised you that you thought was a solution, but you had to kind of backtrack and figure out a different way? I know you talked about the disposables. Was there another time where you were like, oh, gotta go figure that out?
I'm not totally sure. I think definitely like thinking that reusable pads would be better because they're more environmentally friendly, but then finding out that they don't work in Kibera because they have serious sanitation challenges and limited access to clean water, so there's no way to clean and dry them effectively. So I think that was the main thing, yeah.
Amazing job, Miss Cooke. It was absolutely, I want to hear like 2 more hours of this. It was so good. My question to you is, because some girls don't get as much education, and because all the books, I'm assuming they're all in English, is there any other ways that you can convey the same message, maybe in African books or in videos with African messages, other than just English books? Is there other ways?
So I'll talk about a little bit how ABB started. My grandma did a lot of teaching in Tanzania and Kenya, and she noticed that all of the books that these children were reading were just like full of white people, and they were from these European schools. So she started ABB because she wanted to provide culturally relevant books, like with local language, local authors, local artists. So I think definitely if I were to do this project, like again, I would probably do a book box, but like completely local.
Hi, Ms. Cooke. That was a wonderfully detailed presentation, and you really embodied an empowered advocate there. I'm curious to hear more about how you want to extend your learning closer to home and what barriers you see to literacy and to empowerment for people who menstruate closer to home.
Yeah, so I'm doing the book box at Covenant House, and then something else that I want to look into the possibility of doing is seeing if there's a need for menstrual products, because that was another really important part of this project to me, and I think that doing that locally would be really meaningful.
That was a really nice presentation. And I was wondering, when you were talking about the boys box, what would be your like plans to like put in it and like include, just like in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for a boys program, it would probably be just creating like a space where they can just talk about like puberty and consent, especially consent, because that's really important, and just how to sort of grow up respecting girls.
That was a really good presentation. I think what you're doing is really cool, and I have a couple questions. What was your favorite part about like doing what you did, and how can other people help? Like, is there somewhere we can like donate or?
Okay, great questions. I think it's hard to choose a favorite part. This isn't a specific part, but probably just talking to people and getting to know people's experiences and stories. That was really like one of my favorite parts. And then something you can do is, what I would encourage you to do is to go out and find the Margarets of your community and talk to them about the work that they've done and see if they have any ideas for what you can do.
That was really good, like super inspiring. And my question is, where do you think these organizations will go in the future? Like, how will this get better?
That's a good question. I'm honestly not sure. I think that with continued support, like I think for Rock in Kibera, with continued support, that they can start to support even more girls with their menstrual health project, and then with Majengo, yeah, again, more girls with their menstrual health project.
Ms. Cooke, very few people in this room have got the opportunity to even do or possibly even dream about what you've already accomplished. It is something to be said for pushing yourself and growing in the way that you have already done. It is extremely transformative for yourself, but also for those individuals' lives that you've touched as well, too. It's an extremely honorable thing. So the first thing I would like to say is thank you for stepping up for a world that doesn't always show up for itself. If we could give Ms. Cooke one big clap all together. Ready? My question for you, Ms. Cooke, is I think you've highlighted the epitome of what Masterworks can be. And for anyone in the audience here who is maybe second guessing taking on the challenge of a Masterworks, maybe second guessing coming to Island Pacific School because of a barrier like Masterworks, for what you've been able to go through and accomplish through it and will continue to do, what would you say to anyone listening in this room or online to encourage them to go through such a process?
Honestly, I think just don't be afraid. Public speaking is probably my least favorite thing. But I was able to come up here and present my project. So I think, just being able to take on a project and having the confidence in yourself to do that.
Perfect, thank you. That was my first question. My second question is if you could transport us all to areas of where your impact is taking place right now, what would you want us to see? What would you want us to feel? And just what would that energy be like?
Probably to go to Kibera because it's just such a unique place and it's hard to describe. It's the largest informal settlement in Africa. These homes are made out of sheet metal and there's little to no running water. But just to see how the people are still so happy living with so little.
Thank you. Congratulations again, and good luck on the next transformative thing that you go through your life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooke, I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed with you. I think that speech was eye-opening, even for some people here in what a lot of people consider a more developed country. So I'm so grateful for that. I just had a little question about, for all the women in this room, what do you think is something that we can do as individuals to send the message that we are ready to be empowered and we are ready for this next phase? And how do you think we can communicate that to a larger body?
That's a very hard question. I'm honestly not sure. Do you have any ideas? I don't know. That's a good question, though.
Then we'll come on over here for another question.
That was an amazing presentation. It was very inspirational. I see you're trying to spread, you're trying to empower people through books. Do you see yourself writing a book? Or
I've honestly never thought about that. It's definitely a possibility. Yeah, maybe.
Incredibly well done. This is question. You went to different areas. You got different feedback, different responses. And you said something. I think I got it right. You said the difference seemed to be in the level of empowerment that the kids had. And so, did you get any kind of sense of how the heck they got that level of empowerment? What were the conditions that empowered them?
Yeah. So in Kibera, during the period pack talk, the girls seemed like a lot more open and willing to talk about it than they were in Tanzania. And I think that's because there's been lots of organizations in Kibera to help get girls comfortable talking about this. And then I think there's also lots of menstrual health projects that support girls. So I think that makes it so they're more comfortable with talking about these topics.
Mm-hmm. Another quick question. You keep raising a whole bunch of money to make things happen. Where do you donate? How does that happen?
If you'd like to donate, you can donate to africanbookbox.org/contribute. And if you want, you can select period poverty and then donate to that.
Cheers. Thanks.
Well done, Kiana. That was amazing. Miss Cooke, sorry. Your grandmother would have been so proud. I'm curious what you've learned and how you will take that to whatever you want to learn about next. Where do you want to take your own learning?
I think this project definitely started something for my future. I'm not totally sure what it would be, but I clearly have a lot of background in aid work, and a lot of my family has done stuff there. So I think some form of aid work is definitely my future, but I'm not totally sure what that looks like yet.
Thank you, Ms. Cooke, for inspiring us all today. It's so amazing, not only the research you've done, but the work you've done to date, and empowering so many of us, and so many women in particular. I think that's a really important topic. I'm curious, as you've gone through this experience, as you think about access to menstrual products, do you think access for these types of products should be free for women? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a larger theme at play here. I did a project this past year in English on the pink tax, and the pink tax is products for women that are 20 to 50% more expensive than the men's equivalent product. And I think that's just another example of a burden that women have to carry, along with menstrual products. So I think that the first thing that needs to happen is we as a society need to have an honest conversation and acknowledge that this is something that exists, because menstrual products aren't a luxury, they're a necessity, and I think making them free, or at the very least accessible, is one step towards addressing a system that constantly places financial and social burdens on women.